They're in Atlanta. Good evening and welcome to the Antioch City Council meeting. Turn it over to our city clerk for roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a roll call for council members tonight. Councilmember Wilson, Councilmember Tiscarino.
Here.
Councilmember Okerchuk.
I'm present.
Mayor Pro Tem Thorpe. Mayor Wright.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And just so you know, our fellow council members who aren't here are in Atlanta, Georgia at a Tri-Delta Transit conference learning about transportation for us. So they're off on city business. If you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, ask Councilmember Tony Tiscarino to lead us.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we will start with a proclamation today. Do we have a motion to accept the proclamation?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Of course.
All in favor?
There are 3 affirmative votes.
This is the bicentenary of the birth of Baha'u'llah. Whereas a crying need of humanity is the achievement of unity, peace, and justice in our communities, and whereas in the 19th century, Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, brought a message of human dignity, capacity, and oneness suited to the requirements of contemporary life, and October 22nd, 2017 marks the 200th anniversary of the birth of Baha'u'llah. And whereas the city of Antioch, California is a microcosm of diverse racial and religious communities, and whereas since April 21st, 1978, the Baha'i Assembly of Antioch has striven to apply this vision to the material and spiritual life of Antioch, collaborating with others to promote unity and to serve their fellow citizens. And whereas the Baha'is of Antioch and their families, friends, neighbors, and colleagues are commemorating this bicentenary, along with Baha'is across the United States and around the world. Now, therefore, I, Sean Wright, Mayor of the City of Antioch, do hereby declare Sunday, October 22nd, 2017, as a bicentenary of the birth of Baha'u'llah in the city, and urge all to resolve on this day to promote in themselves and in their relations with others those qualities and attributes that will help bring about the recognition of the oneness of humanity, to embrace diversity, and to work for unity in our local community, in our country, and in the world. Sincerely, Mayor Sean Wright. Do we have a representative or representatives from the Baha'i faith that would like to receive this proclamation? If you'd like to stand up. Come up there.
Thank you, John. Thank you again.
Yeah, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much, Mayor. This makes us very
Come on up to the microphone, please. There are people watching on TV, they want to hear it.
my goodness. Thank you very much, Mayor Wright. The Baha'is are very pleased about this. You're joining with the mayor of Orinda also, who has named this as a special proclamation for the Baha'is of the world. And we are very proud of this city, which really represents the diversity of humankind, and both religiously and socially. We're grateful for this progressiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Announcements of civic and community events. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Jennifer Faddis. I am the East County Alcohol Policy Coordinator for the Center for Human Development. My work is funded by Contra Costa County Alcohol and Other Drug Services. Every 5 years, a new strategic prevention plan is developed that all organizations funded by them follow through their work. Which REACH Project and ECAP are hosting a forum for the East County community to voice their opinions about what they would like to see done regarding underage alcohol and other drug use. The forum is this Thursday, October 12th from 5:30 to 7:45 p.m. at the Antioch Police Department Community Room. Please feel free to invite or bring as many community members. There will also be light refreshments provided. I have emailed the announcement to all of the council members. Hope to see everyone out there on the 12th. Thank you, Jennifer Faddis. Nancy Kaiser, followed by J.R. Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, members of the council. Nancy Kaiser, Parks and Recreation Director. This Friday, October 13th, from 4 to 6 in the afternoon at the Antioch Community Center, we will be rocking. It is Halloween Rocks for families and friends, neighbors, individuals of all ages. It is your opportunity to create beautiful works of art, rock painting. It's a Halloween theme. All the supplies are provided, no cost, and you can take your rock home. You can place it in your house, in your yard, or share it out on a trail or in a park. So again, we will be rocking Halloween Friday afternoon at the Antioch Community Center. On Saturday, October 14th at the Antioch Marina, once again, the California Striped Bass Association has partnered with the City of Antioch to provide the 30th annual Free Kids Fishing Derby Day. This is a morning at the marina that is quite delightful. See a number of kids out there, close to 200 kids all fishing. Volunteers help them, parents help them. It's a free day. They provide all the supplies. Bring your own pole. Recreation Department does have some poles to loan you if you don't have a pole. This is for children ages 7 to 14. Registration begins at 9 o'clock at the marina. You can register until 10:45 and fish, and they actually give out some amazing awards right at noon for the various categories. And I want to encourage children of all ages to come out. It's been a lot of fun these past few years to partner with the California Striped Bass Association. Longtime Antioch residents will remember that this was created in memory of Campi Campomiso, and it is really an honor to partner with this group of volunteers and dedicated fishermen that would like to turn kids on to a sport, a healthy recreational activity, instead of drugs, gangs, or other illegal activities. So again, Saturday at the marina, 9 a.m. Come on down and join us. The Antioch Council of Teens held their meeting last week, and they are right now scheduling to come before the City Council and make some announcements at your next meeting in October. But they asked me to come tonight and announce that they are once again offering the Teen Friendly Business Award. They are taking nominations now. They are getting that nomination form out in the community, getting press releases created. We'll be distributing them this week for the Antioch Council of Teens. And again, it's the second year that they're doing this, and it's a mark of recognition given to local business during this holiday season. They'll be making that recognition, and it's given to companies in honor of their commitment to development of healthy relationships between local shops and the teen community. If you recall, last year they recognized T4 out there off of Lone Tree Way, and they came before the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City Council and made that award. So it was a wonderful connection between our business community and our teens, and just delighted that they wanted to continue that and offer it again. Nominations are being accepted now. Spread the word. Teen Friendly Business Awards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. J.R. Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. It's not too often that people come here to give you guys certificates, but we did want to recognize your support for the stand down on the Delta this past August. But before I say that, I would like to say, driving around today, I noticed that there was people with beautification going out from the city and cutting bushes, and there was police patrols, And I just want to say it goes noticed. So we absolutely appreciate that. But with your permission, Mayor, I would like to go ahead and give you guys some certificates. This one is from Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition presented to the City of Antioch. We also have Congressman Jerry McNerney, a certificate of special congressional recognition presented to the City of Antioch in recognition of your contribution to the Stand Down on Delta 2017. And if you guys would, after I read these off, if you go ahead and come down here, I'd love to get a picture for them for you. This one is from the Board of Supervisor Diane Burgess, and recognizes the City of Antioch in recognition of your generosity, commitment, and compassion. Supervisor Diane Burgess hereby honors the City of Antioch for their contributions to Stand Down on the Delta 2017. This one is from the Board of Supervisor Karen Mitchoff. She honors the City of Antioch in recognition of your contributions to Stand Down on Delta 2017. I applaud your dedication to the veterans in our community. And this one is from the Assemblyman Jim Frazier and Assemblyman Tim Grayson, which is a California Legislative Assembly Certificate of Recognition to the City of Antioch, honoring the City of Antioch staff commitment and determination to support the 2017 Stand Down on Delta, wherein homeless and at-risk veterans will receive access and connections they rightly deserve in light of their service to our nation. And that again is from Assemblyman Jim Frazier, the 11th District, and Assemblyman Tim Grayson of the 14th District. And they really summed it up great because there was a lot of people within the city that really worked really hard for that event that didn't really get recognized, and all of those people. This one is from the Delta Veterans Group. Stand Down on Delta 2017 Certificate of Appreciation is hereby granted to the City of Antioch. Thank you. Your unselfish and go-getter attitude had a direct impact on the success of Contra Costa County Stand Down on the Delta 2017. Your continued support of our local veterans and your dedication to help Delta Veterans Group provide outreach and assistance to those who have served our country and given us our freedom is greatly appreciated. Gerald G. Wilson, Jr., Delta Veterans Group, presented on October 10th, 2017. So with your permission, Mayor, if you guys would come down, I would love to give you these. If you guys didn't know, the mayor, Thank you. The mayor was out there doing chiropractic care, and Tony and Lori also volunteered their time. So it really was the whole city council to do that.
Everybody want to take one?
Yeah, if so, just want to do that. Let me give you Diane Burgess, and you want a congressman there? Here you go. There we go. This is Mark. For Mark, the junior congressman. That's right. You didn't put it in a thing. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
very much. Thanks, Tony.
Announcements of board and commission openings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and following the appropriateness of honoring the veterans there, this coming Friday is October 13th, also the birthday of the U.S. Navy. And as such, we're currently accepting applications for the Police Crime Prevention Commission. We have 3 applications for 3 full-term vacancies that expire in October 2021. And 1 partial-term vacancy that expires in October of 2020. We're also accepting applications for a partial-term vacancy due to resignation to the Planning Commission, And that partial term expires October of 2019. All these applications are due this Friday, October 13th, 5 o'clock to the city clerk's office. And for those who apply for partial terms, it's an interesting quirk. There are term limits on our different boards and commissions, and it's 2 terms. But if you apply for a partial term and the council is kind enough to reappoint you, they can reappoint you to 2 follow-on 4-year terms, so it's something to be aware of. There are requirements for Planning Commission because they make decisions and recommendations to City Council on land use, zoning, and general plan issues. They must be a resident of the City of Antioch. And the meetings are held on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of each month at 6:30 here in the council chambers. The commissions are required to submit an FPPC Form 700 Statement of Economic Interest within 30 days of assuming office, and every year thereafter, no later than April 1st. And all newly appointed commissions are also required to complete AB 1234 ethics training within 1 year of appointment, and they're 2 years thereafter. And that training is available online. So this coming Friday is the deadline. They can be dropped off at City Council chambers for the city clerk, or they can be placed in the mail to the city clerk, or you can email them in, and it's recommended to enhance your application that you include a resume. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Public comments. Marty Fernandez, followed by Merle Whitburn.
Mayor, Council, I'm here, again, because I'm not happy with the city of Antioch. I've lived here over 50 years, and this is the neighborhood that I live in, folks. I don't know where you guys live, but this is where I live. Okay? One of the worst streets in Antioch is Barcelona Court, right around the corner from Councilman Testorino's house. We have 16 people living in one house. We have a man running a hauling business with no license out of his house. And we have another house that's had numerous rooms scabbed onto it, non-permitted. It was a model home, so the garage was supposed to be put back into a garage. It isn't. I mean, it's one of the worst streets in Antioch, and it's right around the corner from Mr. Testorino. I just don't understand it. This town is going to hell. It's falling apart, folks, and you're all smiling happy. Do something about it, please. If you want Measure C to be extended, there better be some results, or it isn't going to be extended. Believe me, people aren't happy with the way the town is going. Thank you.
Thank you. Merle Whitburn, followed by Beverly Knight.
I'm Merle Whitburn, and I'm president of Friends of the Antioch Library. Friends of the Antioch Library was formed as a nonprofit corporation in October of 1995. From inception, the nonprofit used book sales to raise money to take care of the needs of the Antioch Library. For the last 15 years, a volunteer named Randy Leong, who lives in Oakley, by the way, has spent 20 hours a week sorting through the donations of used books, DVDs, books on tape, and put in the donation box in the lobby at the library. He made sure that the items put in the book sale were in good condition. Soft-covered books and hardcover books were grouped by authors to make it easier for people to find their favorite author. He also had various sections for large print books, cookbooks, autobiographies, self-help, and many other categories. It took him additional time setting up book sales and also taking down the book sales. We have many additional volunteers that work during the sales and set up and take down the sales. We are the only Friends group that holds sales as organized and as often or as large as our sales are. Because Friends of the Antioch Library is the largest and best organized Friends organization in East County, several years ago we were appointed to be responsible for the Bay Point Library funds and continue to do so today. Several years ago, the board elected to have a pre-sale for members of Friends of the Antioch Library. The pre-sale is the first 2 hours of our book sale and is very popular. By offering this benefit to our members, we were able to grow our membership from 100 to over 200 each year. Our members are predominantly seniors who cannot afford to purchase books at Walmart or Barnes & Noble. Our books are sold for 50 cents for soft covers and $1 for a hardcover. Magazines, 25 cents, and $3 for new releases. A real bargain compared to the retail stores. In 2016, we took in $9,800 in book sales, $990 from membership, and $890 from donations. We in turn gave $9,830 to the Antioch Library for books, programs, and supplies.
Merle, your time is up.
Can I just ask one more thing?
You can ask one thing.
Since we can no longer have our book sales, I would like to ask that you allow us to have room at the Pruitt Center for our library sales.
Thank you.
I have some pictures of our sale.
Beverly Knight, followed by Marion Ferrante.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm here tonight because I needed a large garbage pickup scheduled, and this turned out to be like really hard. We have a big problem in this city with people dumping garbage. Maybe it's because that's easier than calling Republic. I had to call 3 times. I called twice and left messages, and I called a third time. I called twice yesterday. I called a third time today, and I got somebody finally. And then he went into all the restrictions on a large pickup. Can't be bigger than 4 foot. Can't be more than 50 pounds. And then he wanted to know what I was going to throw away. And we get 2 of these a year, and I never even use mine. So I don't understand why we have all the restrictions, for one thing. But then, so I said, that's fine. It all falls into the category. It's fine. But I asked him, I go, why is it I called and nobody's returning my call? Why is this so difficult? And he said that he did return my call and left a voicemail. And it was a blatant lie. No one called my house. I got caller ID. Plus, I've been home for 2 days. So he didn't call my house. So I'm thinking this needs to be looked into. What's Republic doing? Okay, it should be easy to schedule a large pickup. That's why people are dumping. And I told him that. I go, you know what? Been easier to call a friend with a truck. We'll just put it in Antioch, will pick it up. You know, so that's I shouldn't have to call 3 times. And then they lied to me. So that's a problem. Okay. So can we look into this for everybody, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Marion Ferrante.
Good evening. Yes, I'm further representing the Friends of the Library, plus other organizations in this community. I'm here to further what Merle has spoken to, that we're here since we can no longer use the community room so that it can be turned into a warming center for homeless families. We would like the city of Antioch to consider allowing us to move our operation to Pruitt Community Center. The original plans for the Pruitt Center had a beautiful library in the design, not its current 12 by 12 library that's there now. Instead, the city of Antioch felt that a police substation that, to our knowledge, hasn't been used, and there's also office space there for Congressman Jerry McNerney, they decided was better used than space for the library. I don't think that the homeowners that paid the Mellow Roost taxes that paid for the Pruitt Center are proud that their hard-earned money is being used for an unused police station and an office for a politician. We feel the space could be better served with the Antioch community by allowing Friends of the Antioch Library to move their operation to that area. Our organization could also be instrumental in forming a foundation to raise money for this decent library for our citizens of Antioch. The Antioch citizens deserve this. The other point that hasn't been brought up yet, there was a newspaper article about the warming center, and we do want the families to be cared for. We want to make sure that they have considered many options from the city, the state. The state owns the fairgrounds. The city owns other property. There are businesses that are empty right now. So, how much in conversation is the county and the city to ask them about the warming center space? Also, at the library, there will be a number more organizations that will be affected by the warming center being there. Just off the top, it looks like the library is not used in the evening, so of course they could use the warming center there, but they do not know that a number of organizations sign up for evening use of the community center. So Delta Word Weavers is my organization. We've been in the community 30 years, but for a number of years we do have our evening story swap there for adults. So we start at 7 o'clock. The Riverview Garden Club, a long-time organization here, they start at 7 o'clock, and we have meetings once a month. We are only two there are other organizations who meet in the evening at the library that will be affected as the warming center moves in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? City Council Committee reports. Councilmember Tiscarino.
Mayor, none of my committees met, but I do want to, through the mayor, address one of the public comments, which we typically don't do, but my name in my neighborhood was addressed. So I just want to get some clarification. I do share your concern, Mr. Fernandez. It's a frustrating to see some of the blight area around our neighborhoods. I've been in my home since 1980. It was a wonderful neighborhood when I first moved in there. It's deteriorated somewhat, but I start to see some of the positivity out there, but it's not enough. One of the reasons why I wanted to address this, because I want to correct you, to make sure that the good neighbors of Barcelona don't think that their area is blighted. The block that the court that you're talking about is Balboa, which is just around the corner of my home. So I just want to make that clear. I believe that particular home has been, we have addressed it before. We have given notices. I've seen some cleanup there, and I've seen it go back to its blighted situation again too. So what I will do is I'll make sure that our city manager, our code enforcement, addresses it one more time, and hopefully we can get this thing cleared up. But it is a frustrating area. I do agree with you, and I share your concern on that. So it's that neighborhood that we lived for a long time. We want to stay there. It's a great neighborhood. It's just it's frustrating, but we see that in a lot of different locations in Antioch, unfortunately. But it is close to home. It's close to your home, and I want to make sure that you feel comfortable where you live, and I feel comfortable where I live, and hopefully we can resolve some of these issues. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ogorchuk.
None of my committees met. Thank you.
We had mayor's conference this past week. We had a report from the East Bay Regional Park Board about our parks, explain the economic development benefits and their plans going forward. So as far as mayor's comments, I would just like to take a brief moment and give our prayers to our neighbors to the north, those in Sonoma, Napa, and Santa Rosa who are battling fires and losing homes. It is, when you watch hurricanes, it just, your heart goes out to them, but it seems so far away. And these ones, these hit close to home. These are our neighbors, and just give our condolences as a city to our neighbors. We have a presentation today from the Antioch Library, presented by Liz Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I know it's only been 3 months since you allotted extra funding for us to be open an additional 7 hours a week, but I wanted to go ahead and demonstrate some changes that have happened already. It's going to be lots of numbers, but hopefully it'll let you see that we're taking advantage of those extra hours. So since July 1st, we opened up on Mondays, extended hours on Tuesday, and cut a little bit on Wednesday and Thursday. We're open 5 days a week now. So starting out with programs, last year, I just am comparing August from last year to August of this year, so 1 month in. So we had 13 programs last August, 27 this August, 108% increase. Our attendance went up 176%. So I think that's the biggest number right there, just showing that the programs have increased so dramatically. We have more staff, and the staff are what drives the programs, and so that's really made a difference. We had a slight increase in library card registrations and re-registrations. Our computer usage went up quite a bit, being open that extra day. We offered more lunch at the library. The past few years, we've had free lunch at the library that the school district, Antioch School District, has supplied to the library. So we offered 3 days a week through June, and then starting July 1st, we were able to add an extra day of lunch at the library. So we served an additional, what did we serve? 33% more meals. Our Project Second Chance tutor sessions, where adults teach other adults how to read, the tutor sessions went up 16%, and then the computer lab hours went up 53%, so quite a substantial percentage of people taking advantage of the hours there. We now offer an ESL conversation class once a week. We've added a family story time on Mondays at 6, and then preschool story time at 2. Of the 3, the preschool story time has definitely been the biggest hit, so that will continue. We'll wait and see if the others pick up a little more traction. And another set of programs coming up, we received a Keller Canyon Mitigation Fund grant from Supervisor Federal Glover's office. So we decided to have Monday evening concerts for free at the library. We're going to have one a month. And it's sort of to tie into the idea that in the summer you get free music concerts downtown in a lot of cities, including Antioch. And this would continue that free music program once a month at the library. And by having them on Mondays, we'll highlight that we're open on Mondays as well. So hopefully we have seen more people come in, and we'll get even more this way. And it's mostly world music, so from different cultures. We wanted to highlight a lot of different cultures. So we're having jazz, bluegrass, choral music from the high schools, percussion, Celtic, and big band. So a wide variety. Hope you can make it. I think you got a flyer with the dates and times, so hope we see you there. And that's my quick update. I have some breaking news for you. We just found out this week that we are going to have a permanent manager come to Antioch. So my days are numbered there, so it's bittersweet. I've really enjoyed being there for this last year. It's a big branch to manage, full staff, so I think it deserves a full-time manager. So she's going to start next month. Her name's Ruth Boyer, and she was the manager of the Martinez Library for the last few years. I did invite her to come, but it was kind of last minute, and she didn't get off till 6 and wouldn't make it out through traffic, I don't think. But when she starts next month, we'll come out and introduce her and get you a chance to meet her. She's very involved in her community in Martinez, and I think she'll do the same for Antioch. She's into outreach and supporting the staff as they go out into the community. So I think it's going to be a great fit, and I think you'll be very happy. And just one more thing I'll add is the extra funding for the staff for the library for the open hours means extra staff. For the first time in several years, we will be fully staffed when the new manager starts next month. So the staff, I think, with the support from the city, really feel motivated to do more. And I think just having the library open more hours, beyond that, it provides an incentive for staff to really strive to do a lot. And we have a great team right now. They're really out there in the community. We were at the stand down on the Delta. We've been at the schools. The schools have been into the library. So we really want to make an impact. And I think that the staff right now is really going to do a great job for you. So sorry to go. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed meeting you all and working with you, and I'm not going to be too far away, so I'll be at Brentwood starting in November. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilmember Overchuk.
Thank you. I do have some questions, and you've answered a few of them, but the numbers are staggering, so you can see that what you're doing is working, and those extra hours were needed. Some of the questions that I had, when you explained the lunch with at the library, I didn't know the school district was partnering with you, so that was one of my questions. Are you partnering with the school district? Obviously you are.
Yeah.
The only thing that I didn't notice in any of this in the classes that were being brought up, is there any for Hispanics? I mean, are you doing anything just for the Hispanic community?
Yes. So, the ESL conversation class it's for anyone, but the minority population here is Hispanic. So we are reaching out to them to invite them to come and attend the class. I have reached out to the adult ed classes to try and get in and do presentations to their students so that they know that we're available to them. We do have a program right now. It's called East County Reads. It's throughout East Contra Costa County, and we're all reading the same book called The Distance Between Us. It's about a woman from Mexico who comes to the U.S. As an undocumented immigrant. So we're sharing that story with the public, and the author will be coming to Brentwood in November to speak, and we have a bunch of programs around that theme. And so the audience I'm trying to draw with all those programs is an audience from the Latino community. So it is specific to them. I have some flyers, if you'd like, with the information of all those programs that I can give you.
Sure, you can email them, but
Okay.
With the young children, this area has several Hispanic families in it, and I want to make sure that we are hitting all of them, very diverse in that. But I have to say that I did not know, I got a couple phone calls today regarding the garden club and the Friends of the Library, and it's kind of disheartening to see that we've opened these hours and we're cutting these good services of these good people we're doing good works at this library, and I don't understand. So is there a reason why this is being done?
Well, it's above my pay grade. My boss, Melinda Cervantes, the county librarian, is working with the county, and they identified our site as a possible pilot program. The hours that we had talked about were running it from 8 in the evening until 7 in the morning. So really, the groups that booked the meeting room would be impacted by an hour. So it's still reservable throughout the rest of the day. And it doesn't affect our open hours. We're open till 8. So if someone did want to book the room, they only have until 8. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
That makes sense.
yeah. So I think the need was seen in the community for more resources for the homeless, and this is a pilot program that we are working with the county on to see if it can work.
Okay, you've answered that question. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you. Moving on to consent calendar, are there any items that council members wish to pull? If they're not, do I have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Ogerchuk, second by Councilmember Tiscarino. Please cast your votes.
30 affirmative votes.
Thank you. Moving on to council regular agenda. I had the opportunity last week, spent a half a day going through interviews for the open positions, which was exciting to have 12 members of our community who wish to participate and volunteer their time. And it was a difficult decisions as there were many great candidates. And so I am continuing in dialogue with those candidates that have not been chosen about how they might also be able to help the community in other ways. The item number 3, Board Administrative Appeal appointment for one partial term vacancy expiring March 2020. My nomination is right now an alternate on the Board of Appeals. Her name is Faraday Faraji. Has applied. She has been an alternate and is requesting a position on the board. So that is the nomination that I make. Councilmember Ogerchuk.
I do have a comment on this, and I think that when the city clerk gives out, maybe I misread something here, but when the applications are given out, it specifically states you have to have a resume.
Yes.
Correct?
It's actually only a recommendation. It's not,
Oh,
it's not
it's not
mandatory by
mandatory.
code or by policy, and the applications have all been changed. We caught that in there, and because there was a question about it, and it's now says that a resume is suggested to enhance your application.
Okay.
So I have a nomination for Faraday Faraji for the Board of Appeals Board.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Tiscarino, second by Councilmember Ogorchuk. Please cast your votes.
And there are 3 affirmative votes.
For the Economic Development Commission appointment for one partial term vacancy expiring June 2019, we had lots of great candidates. I am asking to appoint Tracy Nix, who is a former retired from the Workforce Development Board with a lot of information about workforce development and brings a lot to the table as far as that goes. So Tracy Nix is my nomination. Do I have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Ogorchuk, second by Councilmember Tiscarino. Please cast your votes.
There are 3 affirmative votes.
For the Planning Commission appointment for 3 full-term vacancies expiring October 2021, we have Janet Zacharatis is the chair, who is asked to serve a second term. Martha Parsons, who is asked to serve a second term, and the vacant seat, I am nominating Bob Martin. Those are the 3 nominations. We have a motion by Councilmember Ogorchuk. Second by Councilmember Tiscarino. I'll give you a chance if you need.
On the question. On the question.
All right.
I'm seconding it. I saw, I didn't, and I read the language earlier, but I was trying to, look at the list of names, and it didn't show it here, so I'm looking through all the resumes here. But I had noticed that we had one of our, distinguished past council members who had also applied for this position, and I was just wondering, from your perspective, why she wasn't considered. I'd just like to know, for my reasoning, for my purpose of reasoning is just we have somebody here that served this community for many, many years, since the 1970s that I'm aware of, very knowledgeable in regards to the city issues, and she took the time out to go ahead and apply. I have not spoken to her. As a matter of fact, this is the first I've heard of it since I've received the package this Thursday, so I've had no conversation. So when I read it on Friday, I was quite pleased that she applied, but wasn't sure what your conversation was. So I'd just like to hear your reasoning when you went through your process. And keep in mind, Mayor, that I've been very supportive of all your appointments throughout this process. I don't usually question, but this one is out of respect to our council member. And
I interviewed with Mary, had a great conversation with Mary, and for the Janet and Martha were asking to serve a second term, so I chose to go ahead and give them that opportunity to continue on. The vacant seat, I chose Bob Martin because of his, he's been on Planning Commission before, his experience. I've talked to our planning department, and they say that on Planning Commission, he's one that really delves into and really studies the material, calls them up, asks really hard questions, and I'm not saying that Mary wouldn't do that, but that was something that impressed me, and the reason that I chose him.
Believe me, I do have a great respect for Bob. I know he's sitting right there, and I've known Bob for a while, and he's a fellow union brother, so it's hard to deny that. So I'm not contesting this. I just wanted to hear your explanation at this particular point. So I'm willing to continue with the second.
Very good. Please cast your votes.
There are 3 affirmative votes, and Zacharatis and Parsons and Martin have been appointed. I'll make arrangements for them to be sworn in.
Thank you. Item number 6, turn it over to our city manager. Consideration and final determination of Board Administrative Appeals decision regarding Antioch Municipal Code violations at 701 Wilbur Avenue, Antioch, owned by Joseph and Deborah Bozeman. And then I'll turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Before our Community Development Director, Forrest Ebbs, and our Code Enforcement Manager, Kurt Michael, give you a presentation, our City Attorney, Derek Cole, will provide a little bit of direction.
Just as a matter of procedure, I do believe, and I've spoken with the applicant's counsel, that the public hearing rules would apply. This is essentially what we call a quasi-adjudicatory hearing where you're acting like judges. This does come up from an appeal, and I've looked at the code. Our code is not altogether express about this issue, but I do think that that is the proper and fair approach. So the rules are that we have two sides. Typically, one side, the chief proponent is allowed to speak for 10 minutes, and then anyone in favor of that party may speak for the standard 5 minutes. And then if there is an opposing side, that the same rules apply. There's a 10-minute for a principal speaker and then 5 minutes for others. Other than that, the standard rules apply.
Okay, well, I'll jump into this. Before you this evening, this is a unique hearing. I don't think we've had one of these, at least in my time here. Before you is an item that was called up by Councilmember Ogerchuk from the Board of Administrative Appeals. The case before you involves a property at 701 Wilbur Avenue, and the history is pretty thorough in your report. Essentially, the Code Enforcement Division found the property to contain 15 RVs on the property that had been connected with sewer and water and electrical. In addition to that, the number of the buildings there had been converted to contain more residential units than our records show are approved. A standard protocol was used. A notice of violation was provided to the property owner. A notice of violation is not a citation. It's simply a notice to the property owner that conditions have been observed on their property. So there's no monetary fine or penalty that goes along with this. It offers the property owner a period of time to correct those violations before citations would be issued. It's essentially a warning or a courtesy notice. That notice contained language that stated that action could be appealed, and so the property owner took that up and did appeal it to the Board of Administrative Appeals. You have that in your record here. The board, in examining this case, found that indeed those violations did exist. Essentially, that's what the notice states. These violations exist on the property. And they denied the appeal, and which means that the notice of violation stands. It's that matter when it's referred to you, you're essentially in the same position. The findings that the Board of Administrative Appeals made are contained in your report, and staff is recommending that you take the same action, that you uphold the notice of violation and deny the appeal. The record speaks all about various solutions and long-term plans and things that could be done at that property. And we've talked about those, and my staff, myself, and the the property owner and his counsel. And there may very well be a long-term solution out here, but that's a function of the planning process and the Planning Commission and our general plan and zoning ordinance. And we obviously would be welcome to any sort of application that would lead to a development project at this site. However, the extent of the condition of the site currently should be disconnected, in staff's opinion, from any long-term plan. The time it would take to put together a plan, have it approved and constructed, would likely be over a year, and it could be even longer than that. Typically with development projects, the incentive is on the developer to proceed, but if this solution is allowed to remain, we may not see that happen. Frankly, the current condition does provide a rental income, and if it remains through the planning process, it could be 1 or potentially even more years. So we are encouraged that there may be a long-term project at this site. It is a very big site in terms of Antioch properties. It's very visible. The adjacent property and the rear portion of this property was approved for a large multifamily project not too long ago. That project has hit some bumps in the road in terms of financing. They stepped out of the most recent financing round, and maybe it'll come up again next year, maybe not. But in any case, the condition of this property, in staff's opinion, are wholly unrelated to everything else happening around out there. And we would suggest that you deny the appeal and uphold the Board of Administrative Appeals decision. The result of that would be that it would return to the ordinary code enforcement process. In a case like this, staff does routinely encounter people living in RVs. It's a very common occurrence, and if it's not RVs, it's backyard sheds that have been converted. We don't immediately evict people. We recognize that there's a due process, and typically anywhere from 30 to 60, and in some cases 90 days, we would allow for folks to find alternative housing, and we do direct them to resources that could help them with that. There are a number of RV parks in this county and also just across the bridge, and there are a number of apartment buildings. So we are sensitive to that issue, and that would be our recommendation, and that would be our course if you were to take that recommendation. So I will conclude my report. I do have my code enforcement manager, Kurt Michael, here. He can answer any questions related to the process or the specifics of the site. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, we received a letter dated October 10th from the law offices of David Larson representing Mr. Bossman. Copies were sent by email to the council and staff, and copies have been made available to you up on the dais and to the staff. There's a copy also in agenda item number 6 in the council packet at the back of the room.
Very good, thank you. Derek, is this a public hearing? But we're going to treat it like one.
Yes,
Okay.
it should be treated like one just because of the unique nature of what's at issue.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and hear from the representative of Orjo Bosman. And, I guess this is open, even though it's not a public hearing. Dave Larson, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, the two council members that are here. This is an unusual hearing. It's a Board of Appeals appeal by a council member, and when I looked at the code, I couldn't figure out, I know it's a quasi-adjudicatory hearing, but I couldn't figure out how long we had to speak. I didn't know if it was a de novo hearing, whether it was simply a review of what had happened previously, or whether there were one or two specific issues that council wished to discuss. And I'm still not sure why it was brought to council. But what we've done to try to address those issues is to request in the letter that you incorporate by reference this evening Joe's written presentation to the Board of Appeal along with all the attachments, and incorporate the oral comments that he made along with a written response at that time, as if he was presenting those for the first time here this evening. I think that covers the transfer appeal portion. I assume that this opens a new statute of limitations, so if we want to challenge the board or the council action, that we still have time to do that, and Derek can advise you as to whether or not he agrees with that. I'm here in a more hopeful spirit. I don't want to talk about litigation. There are two types of attorneys: the zero-sum attorney who's bent his litigation, and the negotiator. And I'm more a negotiator. I have the privilege of being able to vet my clients now, and when I first met Joe, I went on site, and I was thinking to myself, if this guy is a slumlord or he's got a bunch of junk out there, his tenants are not well treated, I'm not sure that I want to take him on as a tenant. And I was delighted at what I saw. Instead, he has great rapport with the tenants. The site is safe, sanitary, secure. Each of the RVs has code-compliant electric service, individual sewage service to the city sewer system. He spent hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars cleaning up the site, getting rid of attractive nuisances, getting rid of public nuisances, and he kind of acts as the guard for the adjacent property out there as well. And I became convinced that if Joe weren't on site, things out there would be a heck of a lot worse than they are right now. And what he's done with some of the interior, he's a cabinet maker, among other things, and a contractor. And what he's done with the interior of units he's renting is just incredible. So we sat down and talked, and I said, well, Joe, what are you looking for? What's your issue? And he said, I'm being told I'm not compliant with certain city requirements. I want to become compliant, and I want to pay all my fees. And so we went to meet with Forrest and with Derek, and the staff report says that staff has met multiple times with the attorney and the applicant. That's just not true. I met one time with Forrest and twice with Derek. The report also says that part of the problem is that Joe insists that tenants remain on site as a part of any resolution of the problem. That's not true either. When we went to the meeting, before the meeting, I preached this to Joe, and at the meeting to Forrest and Derek. And I said, look, I'm a negotiator. I believe in getting to yes, the book Getting to Yes. I believe in the Harvard Project, Covey's principles. And what I'd like to do is to see if we can put aside positions, talk about interests, get to a point where we're figuratively sitting on the same side of the table, looking at the interest of all the parties. And there are three here. There are the interest of the tenants, the interest of the city, and interest of the property owner, and see what we could do. And after spending 45 minutes discussing possibilities, I walked out of there thinking, you know, we're really not going to get too far. And after talking to Joe further, I said, let me meet alone with Derek. Derek and I have solved some difficult problems between the two of us in the past. And we had a second meeting. During the first meeting, as an example, we asked if those residential units could be approved. The staff report says that they don't have any permits, so there's no way to check whether building and safety code compliance exists. That's not true. The inspectors made inspections at every step of the way. They finalized these units. The only thing the two units, not three as the staff report says, but 2 units the only thing they don't have is land use approvals. And the response was, well, we can't approve those 2 units because you would be increasing a non-conforming use. And I thought to myself, you know, we're decreasing a non-conforming use. The only reason in this instance that it's non-conforming is because we don't have enough units to meet the minimum number of units. So every new unit that's approved is one step closer to the minimum number we have to be fully compliant with the existing zoning. And recall, ironically, that the existing zoning is put in place in order to serve the needs of housing, which is acute now in California. And the irony of having to kick tenants out in order to make room for new housing to serve tenants is a little crazy. So Joe said, you know, let's not talk about all that stuff. Let me come up with a plan that's compliant with the existing zoning. And he did so. And we turned it in 3 or 4 weeks ago. And a lot of time has passed, but last week we got word that the plan might work. And yet the staff report says we haven't, made any development plans or filed any applications. And that's extraordinarily misleading, given that we spent a good amount of time and money getting our architect to do plans to show to the city. Granted, they're conceptual plans, but the idea was if these plans work, we'll file a formal application and we'll propose a development that's current. And it was my idea, ironically, not Joe's, to keep tenants on site during the interim. The thought was, if these tenants are interested and want to sign a lease for a unit to be built, why not allow them to stay in place? Some of these units have been occupied since before 1994, 5 to be exact, by my count. And the idea that any harm is going to come in the next 24 months or So while these units are purchased, it isn't very compelling to me. So, but the picture is changing despite what you heard a moment ago. Since I've been retained, there is a builder who's interested and has stepped up to the plate. High Ridge Costa Development Company is going to build that back development. The letter from HUD, the commitment letter for $26 million is expected in May. And so as we focus on interests again and see that the interests are shifting, we're asking that you consider allowing, well, first of all, I think our primary issue, the best thing that could happen in my mind is that you direct staff to continue talking to us and be a little more creative at trying to find mutually beneficial solutions. But short of that, we're asking that the tenants remain until June 1st. By then, we'll know whether or not that back project's going to go. It occurs to me that the bigger developer might, and he's going to be doing more affordable units, might be interested in having these tenants as potential tenants also, but we're told that that's probably not likely. But if the project goes forward, come June 1st, we will tell these tenants they need to relocate. If it doesn't go forward, then the city's issue seems to be we don't want to be looked upon as favoring one property owner over another. How do we deal with that? And as I looked at the code, it was clear to me, and I've Exhibit A to my letter details some of this, it was clear that there is a means already in the city code to allow you to adopt a residential vehicle overlay zone that would apply to this property. So that's what we would be requesting, and we're ready to file applications tomorrow if that's your direction. Whatever happens here, whether you follow staff's recommendation and we're asked to start getting rid of tenants tomorrow, or whether you give some consideration to what we're asking for, if any of this is litigated, we're going to go way beyond next June before a hearing on the merits is going to occur. And again, I'm not a litigator. I do a little bit of it, but I would much rather problem solve than litigate. But the truth of the matter is that there's a relatively short period of time, whether it's code enforcement, court action, or applying for an application for an overlay zone. So I think those are my remarks. I will just ask that you incorporate by reference pages 3 and 4 that
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
are the issues we would litigate if need be. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Joe Bozeman, followed by Jimmy Gordon. Joe, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. You're elected by our citizens to set policy for Antioch. Your staff is to execute and support your visions. You define the character of what this town may become. Thank you for your dedication. I appreciate the time Mayor Wright and Council Member Orkachuk have spent walking my property and discussing the proposed eviction of my tenants. While it is important for me to have tenants, it's especially important to them to have a place to live. I was issued a notice of violation in January of this year. The property has transitioned quite a bit over the 17 years I've owned it, and perhaps I've not done everything right. To that end, I will try and do better. But keep in mind, since 2007, it's been a difficult ride for you as a city and myself, and as a citizen of your city. I would like to clarify the staff's reports, and I've got about 12 items here, just quickly going through them. The property is not blighted as stated in the reports. Workmanship and construction materials are in fact to code. The subsurface soil is suitable for vehicle and equipment storage. 11 building permits have been issued for this property. These include any building built since I purchased the property in 2000. I've cooperated with code enforcement and have been forthright with all requests from code enforcement. I voluntarily maintained and stopped the squatters on the 3-acre next door property at 810 Wilbur Avenue. I worked side by side with Ryan Graham, your former code enforcement officer, in 2012. An investment firm owns the property and depends on me for its maintenance. Item 7, 2 not 3 housing units need planning approval approval only, all building department fees were paid during this fire restoration rebuild. The original bungalow burnt down up there. Item 8, the RV use should continue until HUD can approve financing for the approved council housing project on site. Item 9, water and sewer are hooked up to the city system. The city bills me at a multi-family rate. Item 10, all Measure O fees have been paid. And you can check my city license, etc. Item 11, staff has not provided any locations for the displaced RVs to relocate to. What outreach programs will assist them? Will the VA assist for the veterans out there? And one item, item 12, I'm adding this. What happened to my developer here after it was approved earlier this year, the 126-unit affordable housing project, is that the developer didn't anticipate a CFD tax, which is like a Melrose tax on an affordable housing project. And that was a substantial tax, and the developer backed out for that reason, not financing. And finally, on a positive note, I believe Antioch's waterfront can be a real asset to the city, especially the Fulton Shipyard and Ferry Terminal, if that happens. The city could generate ongoing taxes from its natural assets, specifically the waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy Gordon, followed by Rick Story. Jimmy, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm here on behalf of Joe Bosman and city address where I live at, 701 Wilbur Avenue. I am a tenant there, and I like my place of residence. My trailer barely fits into RV, but that's not the point. The point is I'm secure, I'm happy there, and everything's up to date as far as I'm concerned. Joe is on site constantly, and he keeps tabs on things. If they start to look, junkyard up, he takes care of that, and he's been on top of tenants that don't need to be there. So I'm very secure where I live at. I'm happy where I live at. I'm asking that whatever needs to be done for us to stay there, remain there until, if there is a specific time that we need to move out. I don't think 30 days is going to do it. I don't think 60 days is going to do it. And I really don't think that 90 days is going to do it. As far as RVs go, the places that you can get into, you almost have to have a waiting time. I was very fortunate to find Joe. He had set up a place, and when I came to talk to him, he had one place left for me. And I was very ecstatic when I got there. Like I said, we're secure there. Everything's up to date, and there's no drama there. There's nothing ever called out for. I'm at a point where I can leave my door open when I go to work. I have no problem living there. There's a gate that gets closed at night, and we're pretty secure. Everybody is very cordial there. Everybody respects each other, and Joe made a really good improvement to his property. That's what I want to say. There are the veterans. I am a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and what I own, what I've got left. In 2012, I broke my neck. It took me 2 years to recover from that in a car accident on Christmas Eve. I got that trailer out of that deal, and I had nowhere to put it. Man, I looked everywhere to put that trailer, and it took me almost 1.5 years to find a place to put it. And when I got there, I didn't foresee any problems. Everything, when I hooked up, everything was up to date. So I'm not understanding what's going on. But then again, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm definitely not a council person. So I would appreciate if you guys could consider Joe and whatever needs to move forward. But I'm secure, and I really like my place where I live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rick Story. Rick, you as well will have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Rick, and I agree 100% with what Jimmy said. I've been there longer than any other of the RV people. Been there for about 9-10 years, and before I found him, I really didn't know a place to take. I have a motorhome that's in awesome shape. It's a 79 though, and I've kept it almost like showroom on the outside, and it's been a real pride of mine. But then nobody around here will accept anything now around the whole Bay Area, and I don't know what I'm gonna do if or told to leave. I just don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up to you guys, and Joe is awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any other public comments?
None received.
Then the public comment portion is closed. This item is now before council. I will open it up to council for questions.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, may I make a few clarifying remarks?
Please, yes.
So just so the council, just so we could focus, the issues technically that the council are deciding are set forth in attachment C3 and D1 of your staff report. But basically, Mr. Bossman received a notice of violation, which technically Mr. Ebbs clarified was not a formal notice, but Mr. Bossman received a notice that says he was violating 3 specific sections of the city code. Those are outlined both in Exhibit C3 and D1, and there was a hearing before the Board of Administrative Appeals which determined that Mr. Bossman was in fact violating those sections of the code. And so tonight, because this item was called up by one of our council members, the only specific issue you can legally address tonight is whether you agree, based on the evidence in the record and the evidence that was summarized by staff and by Mr. Larson and by the speakers, whether that evidence determines there was in fact a violation of any or all of those codes. And that really is the only issue to be decided tonight. I do believe that there have been some constructive ideas presented about how to deal with this site. And Mr. Larson is correct that he and I have spoken. Mr. Ebbs has also been involved at least in one of those meetings, and certainly applications can be filed. There's nothing to stop any property owner from filing the application. So I want to make clear to the council that nothing you do tonight can stop Mr. Bossman from filing applications to do what has been outlined in the letter and tonight. We can't stop him from doing that, and he doesn't technically need your permission to do that. He can do that tomorrow, he can do that next week, he can do that at any time. We did receive a sort of a conceptual drawing, as Mr. Larson mentions, which showed some promise. It was not fully in the form that would be required if a full-fledged application were filed with all of the information that an application requires, but certainly it looked like it could be converted into that with some additional work. So I just want to be clear that you do not need to give any authority to anybody for anyone to file an application. Staff will process an application. Also, I do want to make clear that if this council affirms the Board of Administrative Appeals, that doesn't mean that Mr. Michael or his staff are going to show up tomorrow with an eviction notice and with police and others kicking people out. The reality is that, as Mr. Ebbs has advised, abatement is really a separate process. And I will state, and again, this is not with any insinuation to the property owner, but just my general experience as a city attorney for a number of cities and as a municipal lawyer, abatement in this type of case is not easy and would require a lot of effort. And whether it's administrative or through court procedures, that's a lot of time and a lot of effort and some expenditures of city money up front to make that happen. And the point I'm trying to make is that even if this council affirms these violations, Mr. Bossman and his council can disagree with that, of course. We're a long ways off from any ability to go out and start kicking people out of their units. And I don't want to go too much down the road, but to the extent that legal recourses are required, there's other steps that I would have to take as city attorney with your blessing. And I don't even want to go down there, but I'm just saying that we're very far off from that scenario, and that really isn't before you tonight. So really all that's before you tonight is there a violation, or are there a violation of these codes? I know Mr. Ebbs and I will continue to work with the property owner regardless of what happens tonight, whether the decision is in favor of the appellant or against him, and we will continue to roll up our sleeves. But I just wanted to make some comments, and I apologize for the long-winded time I've spent.
I appreciate your clarification. I have lots of questions, but my questions are more about a future application than an appeals process. I've got lots of questions about a future application. It sounds like regardless of our decision tonight, there's the opportunity for a future application process.
Yes, certainly. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've spoken of even RV parks. I mean, there's what's out there today, and there's also an RV park. Remember, we had Vista Diablo in here a few weeks ago, and that's a more traditional RV park where you have the full improvements and the open space and all those types of things. And something like that could be accommodated in our municipal code at this site. It's just, that's not what's out there today.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Tiscarino.
Yeah, this is going to be very difficult, because this is, I think, in my tenure as a city council member, I think this is the first time that we've come across this that I'm aware of. So you're asking us to either support or deny an appeal process that the Board of Appeals made a decision on based on information from our staff and information from the folks who are appealing this. And my questions are, again, just like the other council members, what the future lies, but that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to determine if the owner of the property did indeed violate codes according to our laws here or not, and that's going to be a difficult determination. So I'm going to go through a couple of process questions with you. Might take a little bit of time, and again, keep in mind that we're just seeing this for the first time. I think on Tuesday, the appeal. Reading your information this morning as best I could, that contradicts some of the staff recommendations or findings. So those are the things that I need to ask if I'm going to make a conscious decision or vote, because I do recognize that we have people involved in this, and I'm very sympathetic to our folks and our residents out here, but we need to make sure that we are doing the right thing according to our laws. One of the things that one of my backgrounds was when you went through arbitration processes, you can only abide by what the language says. Whether you sympathize or not, it's just what the language states, and that's what you rule. So I'm trying to understand that as well, but understand that there are lives involved and people are affected by this. But I do question some of the things that Mr. Larson stated here that is contradictory to what I read in our staff report, and I just want to get some clarification here. One of the questions that he said that was not necessarily true was that the city has tried to notify or numerous times notified Mr. Bozeman, and according to Mr. Larson, since he's been involved in this process, that's not the case. But and the question to staff is, anything prior to June 23rd, 2017, has there been any contact with the landlord on this regard?
I can tell you that our code enforcement staff met with him on multiple occasions. This was initially put before the Board of Administrative Appeals. It was continued 2 times. I know there was discussions with City Attorney Cole. I know that I met at least once, and I'm inclined to think we met twice on this, just to discuss, possible outcomes. And I know that the city attorney spoke on the phone multiple times. At the end of the day, we ended up where we're at right now, where staff's position is that the notice of violation is simply it's documenting there are violations on the property, that we're not empowered as staff to negotiate an outcome that circumvents the planning commission process and a whole in-depth planning process that would have to come through an application. So I think that's where we departed, was that perhaps they're looking for an outcome that went a few steps further than where we're at tonight. Tonight, and at the Board of Administrative Appeals, it was simply, do these conditions exist or don't they? And I think that's where some of the misunderstanding
And that's
occurred.
what I'm trying to determine is, it was the conversations from June 23rd, 2017, when Mr. Larson was contracted by Mr. Bozeman with communicating with the city. Was that more or less starting trying to alleviate or fix the violation problem, or more of the planning process of the property?
I'll give you my recollection. I was just one party there. My recollection was that there was not an offer to begin removing the RVs or making arrangements to find new housing for anybody. Every solution that came forth involved all the units remaining in place until some replacement project was built, either next door or on this property.
Okay. And I might jump in. In my opinion, this is a difficult situation in the abstract, because staff's position is that these are illegal uses, but these uses have been illegal for many years. If the council accepts staff's position, then ultimately it is finding that these are illegal uses that have existed for many years. And so obviously you have people who are relying on their ability to live at these residences, but you have a situation where you have a pretty substantial use of property that didn't go through all the planning channels. And so from a staff standpoint, it's difficult to deal with this situation, because you're not just dealing with this situation, you're dealing with the precedential value. You have to treat, in code enforcement, it's very important to treat properties and property owners equally. You can't show favoritism to one and not another. So one of the tough issues that we are trying to deal with, and I think Mr. Larson alluded to this, is what do we do with the tenants who are out there? In the ideal world, from purely a municipal regulation standpoint, we would have people leave the property because there's continuing violations when properties are being occupied. But the other side of the coin is that these are people who have lived out there for many years, and and they're relying on the housing. You've heard from two individuals. And so we're trying to work through some tough issues. But I will say that, I spoke with the applicant's counsel a few more times than Mr. Ebbs. We did have a sit-down meeting. We're trying to work out a way to move this forward, and we explored zoning options. We explored applications. I believe the mobile home overlay was something that Mr. Larson developed based on his own review of the code, which, I certainly give him credit for thinking outside the box. So the problem is we're dealing with the hard situation, which is, in the ideal world, there's a violation, and we would say, no, you have to stop the violation right away. We can't let you do this. But on the other hand, you have people who are living there, and people who are not necessarily have the means to just walk away. And so it's not an easy discussion. I will tell you, this is not an easy one. This is probably one of the hardest things I've seen. Councilmember Tiscarino, you've said it yourself. This is not easy for me. It's not easy for Mr. Ebbs. It's really not easy for Mr. Larson either. So we're in a really difficult situation, and I just want to reemphasize to the council that whatever we do tonight doesn't mean we're going to stop trying to fix this. And I would reemphasize that we are so far away from going out and trying to kick people out of their RVs. That's many steps down the road. So anyway, I'm being long-winded again, but I apologize.
No, that's fine. And I was getting to that point because, our area of discussion and decision-making is towards the violations aspect of this. And so And the reason why I was asking these timelines, because I wanted to make sure that if staff was communicating with Mr. Bozeman prior to him contracting Attorney Larson, that I got a better understanding. So, do you have a timeline of when these violations started occurring? Or started giving these violations?
No, I mean, we can't tell you when the sewer lines were installed throughout the property, or when the meters were installed, or the electrical run, or when the existing buildings were converted to additional units. We don't know when they did that. Frankly, if we knew that was occurring, we would have stopped at the time. But it came to our attention earlier this year.
Can you tell me when you're aware of the first violation that was sent out to the owner?
Yeah, I believe it was January of this year was the first inspection of the property.
So it's okay. I'm looking at the timeline. Thank you. I was trying to write my questions, even though I did remember this, but old age tells you that.
So
you
we did
forget
receive
certain
a
things.
complaint on January. Yeah, January 11th was the complaint, and January
Okay.
27th was the inspection, first inspection.
Well, I just wanted to be clear on the communication aspect, because I wrote 3 different things out here. It was the timeliness notifications. We're not going to be discussing what the future lies in the builder. I mean, that's going to be done, you said, regardless. One of the things that scratched or made me scratch my head a little bit was that you're trying to protect the tenant rights, but if you do decide to move on and with the project around June 1st, that you're going to start making proper notifications for them to find out elsewhere. So you are telling them in some respect that you're going to end up, if you do indeed go forward, that you're going to have to find another place to go. So are they aware of that, or do they know that they may have to go? So,
If you're asking questions,
can I ask him a question?
Go to the mic.
Yes.
Yes.
Please announce your name one more time.
Joe Bossman, 701 Wilbur, owner. So all my tenants are aware of the potential for a future housing project and that they would have to leave someday. And since 2004, I've made my tenants aware of this. I've been through several applications with the city. A 69-unit affordable housing project from Simpson Housing Solutions in 2004. It was denied without prejudice. I went through the RDA process with Mayor Freitas, and then we had a project here that was just recently approved, and now this is the 4th try at trying to get something built. And if I may offer...
Joe, please, the public comment portion is done. You can answer his question, but beyond that.
Oops, sorry about that.
Sure. Did I answer your question?
that was my question, that you were aware already, and you've already notified your tenants that there's a potential that they would possibly be leaving, have to relocate if you do move forward with this. So
they're aware.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to end right now. I just wanted just to be clear. I know there's and I'm hoping that the other council members will address this well, because there's some discrepancies from Mr. Larson's point of view compared to what staff says, and have you had a chance to look at these and prepared to answer any of these questions we do ask these?
Yeah, I can answer any specific questions you may have.
Now, are these questions about violation, or are they about future planning?
Are they about the letter from Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I just wanted to know that are you aware that they talked about the entire housing. I'm going to call it the housing facility, because they do rent part of their and I know it's a temporary recreational facility, and I know that we have some laws and rules about that. But are each one of those permitted for livable, to be livable housing?
No.
They're not permitted at all?
No.
So
you cannot live in an RV outside of an approved RV park. And the state of California has a role in licensing RV parks. And this site has never received any approval from the city or from the state to operate as a RV park. So therefore, none of the units out there are approved for permanent habitation.
And if they were, they would be subject to the Measure O?
Yeah, they'd be considered rental units, and they'd be subject to a series of development impact fees and all that goes along with it.
And none of that's occurred?
None of that's occurred.
Okay, so that's contrary to what I'm reading here. You know, may I yield to the rest of the council members? I may have some other questions. Yeah, thank you.
Not unless
I didn't ask the question.
Not unless there's a question asked. Councilmember Overchuk.
So I want to clarify why I brought this forth. When I got a call from Mr. Bozeman, actually from a friend of his that's a mutual friend. So I went out and saw the property, and he asked me to do this appeal. When I saw the property, my heart went out to the people that reside there, but I also had a conversation with Mr. Bozeman about the violation, that he was in violation. So I'm very happy the attorney, Mr. Cole, clarified what we're here to look at tonight. And I pulled it out specifically C3 through the D1. And as I told Mr. Bozeman that night, that day, he was in violation of the Board of Appeal, but I was going to put it on and request the council look at it. I didn't feel that 3 minutes was sufficient time for him to share his concerns with what he had in the residence back there. And I also talked with Mr. Bozeman, and I had concerns regarding the tenants in the RVs, whether or not he was supplying them with the information if they had to leave, with where to go and how to leave. And he had not. And to the state, from what I read, that still has not happened. So my process is, he is in violation of C3 through D1. Whatever happens after this, that's going to be worked out between with Forrest's, Mr. Ebb's department, and with the city attorney, with Mr. Bozeman and his attorney, Dave Larson. That's all we're addressing tonight. So thank you very much for clarifying it, and that's where I stand.
So, Derek, if I get this right, we are sitting today as a judicial body, not a governing body.
Correct.
We are hearing something. We're hearing the facts as to whether there was violations made. We are judging whether there were violations made or not based on those facts.
Correct.
But we're not a governing body in the sense that we're looking at what we want the ultimate land use to be. That's not what's before us today.
Correct. Certainly, I think it's okay for you to express sympathy or to, express a desire to staff and myself that we work something out, but that's really one of those directional things. As far as what can be legally done, it's simply to either affirm or deny the appeal. And with that,
as I've read this and gone out and looked at the property, when they issued these violations, there were violations on the property. And so from a judicial body, there were violations on the property. I'm glad to hear that if we vote that there were violations, it doesn't mean that we're going to immediately evict. In fact, my direction to staff would be sit down with the fellow attorney and see if we can work out something that is ultimately brought before staff, a future project. The question would, if the future project is June, I mean, this has been a project that's been gone to since 2004 with no working on an end. And so we're hoping that there's an end in sight. I hope for you, Joe, that there's an end in sight, right? We'd like to see that. Is there a way to come to some conclusion that, if we don't want that, if we and ultimately we can't, that's not even a decision to make, but if we don't want this to be an RV park long term, how do we determine that going forward and say, there's a certain time point at which an RV park is no longer going to be permitted there?
Let me answer it this way. The nature of this type of use, given the amount of persons involved who would be affected, the significance of the number of units, and the significance of the violations, if they are found to exist, is that this is not simply ordinary code enforcement. This is the type of code enforcement that I would bring to you as city attorney for potential litigation. And again, speaking entirely in the abstract, I'm not suggesting that we are headed towards litigation. I'm just saying if I take the nature of what's going on at this property, based on my experience as a municipal attorney and as well as someone who is very familiar with code enforcement, this is this would be a significant undertaking, and it would require council approval to direct either me or a private law firm or some combination of both to take enforcement actions, either through the courts or through some very formal abatement process that's done administratively. And so the reality is that can't happen unless we can properly convene in a closed session, which we're very far off from. So I guess my response, Mr. Mayor, is that as a city attorney, I don't want to force this city to get into that process unless we absolutely have to. And I think there's a genuine expression of sympathy for the folks who live in these facilities and that their lives would be affected. So the reality is, I said it before and I'll say it again, we're very far off from that point. And so I think perhaps, hopefully, the property owner is hearing from you in the words that you and your colleagues have said, that something needs to happen quickly. We can't just, kick the can down the road. But that also puts the onus on staff to work with the property owner. So really, I think you've given direction to staff. I think the property owner has heard all of the things you and your colleagues have said. We need to move this forward. But I guess the point is, if we exhaust all opportunities and there just really isn't anything we can do, then we can come to you in an appropriate litigation setting.
If I could add one quick thing, the vast majority of our code enforcement complaints and cases are resolved short of a citation. I mean, we're fortunate to have a professional staff. So litigation isn't even a word we use in our office because it's simply, it's so rare and so infrequent. And I would anticipate that this would be resolved far short of litigation if I can rely on my staff. In a case like this, and I'll speak in the abstract here, first steps would be things like getting an idea of how many units are out there and who's living there, so when somebody moves out, someone else doesn't move in. If we've agreed that if we're on the same page that we're going to slowly start abandoning this use, that's a good place to start. If someone moves out, no one else moves in, and that's how you don't displace somebody. So it's that kind of common sense that we would employ in a case like this as a starting point. And as long as everyone's moving in the same direction and we have cooperation and we agree to some common sense approach to this, we shouldn't have any trouble.
Very good. Councilmember Tiscarino.
And again, I don't have any further questions. I just wanted my questions, the reason why I asked my questions, so I can get a better clarification how I wanted to proceed on this. It's clear that there are violations. I see that now. I know that Councilmember Orgachuk has acknowledged that as well when she asked to hear this. I just want to make sure that and I appreciate the conversations that we're having here. I think all parties do agree that we're trying to get something resolved here. We want to work together, but our area of responsibility at the particular point is it's small. Do we have violations or we don't? And that's what we have to make determinations on. And what I'm seeing here is that the city did give citations to the landlord, and there's a process of those being addressed, but there was an appeal process. The Board of Appeals made their determination, and if there's no other questions, I don't know if Councilmember Orgachuk wants to go ahead and submit a motion or not. Well, I can do that, but I'll leave it up to you.
So I'm going to make a motion that the City Council uphold the Board of Administrative Appeals decision regarding the notice of violation issued to Joseph Bozeman for violations of the Antioch Municipal Code.
We have a motion by Councilmember Orgachuk, a second by Councilmember Tiscarino. Please cast your votes.
There are 3 affirmative votes, and the you've upheld the decision of the Board of Administrative Appeals.
Thank you, very helpful. Seriously, very helpful. We appreciate it.
Are there any public comments? Bob Martin.
Mayor and City Council members, I'm Bob Martin. My selection for being on the Planning Commission was both a privilege and an honor. The privilege is now I have a chance to start reading things like environmental impact reports, study staff reports to no end, follow the municipal code and the guidance that comes from you, the council members, and visit some wonderful sites around the city that I really enjoyed when I was on the council before. I got to see some things that I had never seen before, and some of them haven't been developed yet, but we'll see if we can get farther along than that. It's an honor, I think, that you chose me over all the other candidates that were listed there. And I agree, Mary is a great candidate. She's been on the Planning Commission, she's been a city council member and a mayor, and she stays involved. So, but I really thank you for including me in the group that's going to be planning the next part of the city of Antioch. Last but not least, I want to thank you for being a group of people who think I can really be a good planning commissioner. Thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Staff communications.
First, I'd like to say I think Mr. Bob Martin is a great choice for planning commissioner. When I first started here with the city almost 20 years ago, I spent many a late evening with him going over in great depth staff reports, asking him numerous questions. So I'm confident that he is an excellent choice for that post. Just a couple things to remind the council of real quick. Nancy Kaiser mentioned the Halloween Rocks this Friday from 4 to 6 at the community center. The Kids Free Fishing Day that Compi Compromiso, that was started years ago, and it's a great fishing derby, very positive event where kids get hooked on fishing and not on drugs or gangs. Our food truck Thursdays have been extended through October the 26th, so that's been very popular and very successful out at the community center. And then finally, the Red Sand Project, which raises awareness about human trafficking. There's going to be an event held on Thursday, October the 19th, from 4 until 7:30 out at the community center, also in conjunction with the food truck event. So just encourage the council and the community to participate in those events. Thank you.
Thank you. Council communications and future agenda items. Councilmember Overchalk.
So on November 3rd, I'm hosting a senior walk at the Summersville Town Center. It's going to be a resource for our seniors, and it's also going to bring awareness to Alzheimer's.
Very good. If there is nothing further, we stand adjourned.